What if I told you that you can write a book in just 11 days or even 3, even if you have zero experience and are not good at writing? And what if I told you that your book is a more valuable asset than real estate, money, and stocks? Well, stay tuned as Billy Badass and I discuss how our lives have changed with tons of opportunities, amazing relationships, and the life of our dreams, all from sharing our personal story in a book. The Dirty Truth starts now.
It's a Dirty Truth with Deante Young.
I think we owe it to people to explain how the book writing process goes, because I wrote my book in 11 days and you wrote your book in like what, 3 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, the reason why it's important is because everyone has a story and we call it the dirty truth. If you can swap it out with any other word, it can be hardships, challenges, your testimony, whatever. But we call it the dirty truth. And if you don't feel like talking in that way, then just call it whatever you want to call it. But we have done something that anybody can do, and that is share our story in a book, and it creates so many opportunities. But I know a lot of people, they have questions about how to do it, and I know you are the ringleader at that, because you can't have this thing where you wasn't really a writer, but you can tell your story better than me. Go into how you got started with writing a book.
I decided one day that after doing a lot of back and forth and thinking about things that happened in my life and things that bothered me in my life, things that were very traumatic in my life, I was sitting there thinking, how can I put it into words? Mm-hmm. And then the one thing that I had the biggest issue with was my daughter's birth. With the anger, the sadness, the happiness, everything that was going on. And I wanted to tell that story because, for one, I was the only one living left that, or I should say left living, that could tell the story from my eyes.
Right. So how did you transition from that to just actually getting the mind to do that?
You, listening to you, getting inspired by you. I would have never thought of writing a book. I would have never thought of sitting down and actually reading books. It's not that I haven't read books, but never thought of being a writer, period. It's just not my thing. But I was like, you know what? I want my grandkids to hear this story, and I want my daughter to hear it from my eyes.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, is because we don't want anyone else to tell our story. You don't want anyone else to tell your story. And the reason why is because no one can tell it like you. It's just like you said, you are the only person that can articulate the thoughts you were having in those moments. And what I like to tell people is that Abraham Lincoln has been dead for like 150 years. And so there's nobody left in the world that knows who he is, but yet we know all about his life. Why is that? Because there's
Somebody
books.
Wrote a book.
Yeah, there's books. And it's so important for us to share our story. I know we're going to get back to your story in a bit, but the only way I was able to help you is because I had to go on my own journey. And in 2020, I was sitting there with 0 books, wishing I could have written a book. And then through the process of just staying tenacious and being really committed to the process, I said, I'm going to do this come hell or high water. And I, took some courses, invested in myself, read some books, and was able to do that, and wrote my first book in March of 2021 in a matter of 11 days. Now, fast forward that to the summer of 2024. At that point, I had 8 books, and I had a lot of experience, and that was when I was able to help you.
Yeah, I have my own living coach.
Yeah,
it was easy.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know that I had never written a book before, and of course you had never written a book before. So for all of you who are saying, well, I don't know how to write, or I don't like writing, or I don't care about writing, there are things now that if I was writing a book for the first time now in 2025, there are things that I would do completely differently, and I would be able to coach you differently. And instead of writing your book in 3 days, you could have probably did it in 3 hours,
Yeah, but the thing about it is that you don't have to know how to write. You know, I'm bad at forming sentences,
Right.
punctuation, all that stuff. So, when I say I wrote it in 3 days, it wasn't, nothing was perfect. It was just that rough draft, and then, going back over it. Of course, you did a lot of the editing and stuff, but yeah, I mean, anybody could do it, and especially if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's important to internalize that, like she said, that anybody can do it. It's not like we're special. It's just a matter of the difference between a person who is a published author and a person who just wishes they were is the decision. That's the only difference. And you made a decision. And again, I've always been known as someone who likes to write, but you were the polar opposite,
Yeah, but it when you're telling your story, now any other kind of books I probably wouldn't have, but telling a story was so easy because you don't have to think.
Yep.
It's already in your head. You just scribble it down and it's there, and I think that's what made it easier. But now I feel like I could do more. But doing that one.
And that's the important thing. You actually made a great point, is that we're talking about nonfiction books. We're talking about your story or even your expertise, because it's going to flow off the tongue. Even if you overthink it, just know that you're overthinking it. If you say, man, I know my story, but I don't know where to start. What advice would you give people if they just simply don't know where to start with their own story?
Well, I started with picking the name, the title of the book. And once I picked that, like I said, the story. You just start from the beginning and finish at the end. Leave out details that doesn't really matter. Like somebody sneezed in the room, you don't have to put that in there. But,
Right.
You just put down your feelings, your thoughts, everything. And like I said, if it's your story, it's going to be easy because you're telling it from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
And you don't want somebody else to write your story because it's not going to be put out the way you want it to be put out, but it's also not going to be able to describe it. And I remember playing a game in school. I think we were in like the 6th grade. And, the teacher told, we sat in a big square, all the kids, and she told them something. And by the time it got back to the last person, it was a totally different story. So there's nobody better to tell your story than you.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. One thing I would have to say is that your story is your legacy. And to be honest with you, when I say that it's a bigger asset than anything else you have, is because your story, first of all, is what allows you to know what mistakes not to make later because of things that happened earlier in your life, things that you did at 20. And then when you're 40, your story from 20 helps you to do something different at 40. And it just goes on from there.
Yeah. And like my story, it was more, I want my grandkids to see what their mom went through. I want my daughter to understand what I went through as well as what she went through in the process. So I got to tell my story before I'm no longer here to tell it.
Yeah.
And nobody else is going to be able to tell it.
Yeah.
Because people's not going to understand the feelings. Somebody can say, oh, well, she was really sad. Well, of course she was.
Yeah.
Or she was really sick. Well, of course she was. That was the purpose of the whole story. But I was able to put it into detail of why it was the pain, why, she was going through what she was going through. So, yeah, telling it yourself and being able to do it while you're here and leave it for your family to be able to read, your grandkids, your kids, it can be something as simple as one bad day of your whole life and you can turn it into a book.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because I just want to make it clear that your story is actually the asset. The book is just the vehicle that carries that asset. And you can spin it off into other things, whether it's speaking engagements and things like that. I've done that, and it's so rewarding because you kind of get something off of your chest. It's like it's really cathartic. It's therapeutic. I know you said that you felt a weight was lifted off of you. It doesn't mean you walk around perfect after that, but a weight was lifted off to you.
Yeah, definitely. And telling your story is just like the beginning of it. The things that go on in your brain, the things you hold inside your head and stuff, it sits in that back of your head, and when you put it on paper and you're able to look at it, it's like, wow, this is amazing, and it feels so much better.
Yeah. So so we want to unpack this now. You're going to be like kind of the audience advocate, okay? You're going to be the person who's never written a book before, and you ask me questions as a person who knows nothing about a book, because I really want to bring value to our viewers to be able to really understand why this is so important. It's important because it's your legacy, and like she said, you want to make sure that you're telling people in your words, and also it serves other people, and I think that we all have that obligation to do that. So you are, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to say too is, don't think of it as who cares about my story. There's always going to be somebody out there, plenty of people that's going to relate to that story, because that was the biggest question I had when I started, like, who's going to care? Mm-hmm. They're going to say, yeah, moms have babies and babies are sick all the time. But it's an inspiration to help those parents that there's hope at the end of the tunnel, mm-hmm. or, whatever the case is, you're helping people in different ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, some people like to read stuff like that,
yeah. And again, there's also the fact of just having it so your loved ones, your kids, your grandkids, whoever, they know who mom was, dad was, uncle was, sister was, brother was. They know who these people were in their words. So, okay, so we're going to play this where you're going to be the audience advocate. So you've been thinking about writing a book, and you have questions. What are you thinking if you had someone to ask, what would it be?
How can I write the book? I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So my first question is going to be, why would I write a book?
Yeah. And we pretty much already said, so why would you write a book? You would write a book for yourself, for other people. And some people, they write books to start a business, to create opportunities, to be doing speaking engagements, because they always say that people with a book, if they write a book on a topic, it's like they are the authority, they're the expert. So even though you wrote your story, it was actually like on a subject that's a general subject for a lot of people, birth problems, birthing problems, premature birth, or all these different types of things. That's a subject. So people can also consider you an expert at how to cope with that, how to manage that, or whatever. So I would tell someone the way to start is just think, what is your DTOC? It's a term that I came up with, DETOC. It's your defining emotional trauma or challenge. So whatever in your life, you can look back on it and think, what was the thing that was a challenge or a trauma that I went through? And there's probably several for human beings. And you just think, which one was like the defining one? Because it could have been like you got cheated on by your husband or your wife. It could have been you went through like cancer or some horrible illness. It could have been you lost a loved one. It could have been your marriage fell apart. It could have been you were living homeless because you lost everything. It could have been just anything like that. You lost a business. So you start there, because that's going to be the thing that really is still in the back of your mind, even if you don't know it. And you don't have to think about writing your life story, but just a specific part of it. And that's where the DTOC comes in. It's your defining emotional trauma or challenge. And you want to talk about how to write it quickly. In a nutshell, you don't know how to write and you want to write it quickly. Well, you can kill two birds with one stone. Just simply speak it. Speak your book. Speak it into one of these type of things. This thing right here. This is a mobile phone. And it has a voice memo feature, and some people, they want to use a tape recorder, whatever it is, just take it down, and then you can turn those words into a transcript. That transcript will turn into words on a page, and then you just have to get someone to edit it, and that's very easy. You can go to a place like Fiverr, which is an online sort of like a online work for hire kind of place. You can go to Upwork, and you can place a bid. and you can have these things done, proofread and all that kind of stuff. So that's how you get started. And then once you get going, you're going to get more ideas. So what would be, okay, you have all that information. Then what would your next question be?
The next question was the book cover. I knew what I wanted as a book cover, but I didn't know how to get it together. I picked out exactly what I wanted. I knew what the title of my book was going to be, but I didn't know how to do it.
And you have your book. Let's see your book. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So the thing about that is, with a book cover, whenever it's a memoir or like a personal story, a lot of times people will just put their picture, and it's usually a headshot. It does not have to be that. It could be something that sort of articulates an idea. So, like, for example, you have a picture of your daughter as a baby, as a child on there, right? So that's something that you decide to do. You could have also articulated that by having like a picture of, let's say, a bouncer or a crib that was empty, or a pacifier or binky. You could have had that just by itself on the floor, or you could have had just like a sort of a generic picture of a mother just like on her knees with her hands up to her face. So the best way to really explain it is, how can you visually explain something that like the title, for example, like that one is called A Mother's Hopeless Prayer. Okay, so how would you think of how you can describe that visually? What does the words "a mother hopeless prayer" look like as a visual? And things come to mind for me is like a mother on her knees praying with a crib behind her. It can be like a mother laying beside the bed in the hospital with the baby. It can just be anything along those lines. You get the gist of it. And like, for example, my first book, I could have, had a picture on the cover, but I just used words. And if I were going to depict, because that book was about insecurities and managing your insecurities, what I could have did, instead of using words, I could have just simply had like a chubby boy, like how I was when I was, like, obviously right now I'm well past the chubby stage, but when I was a kid, I was chubby, and it could have just been like a chubby chocolate boy with people behind him, like kids behind him, like throwing paper at him or mocking him or, pointing and laughing. And then he has this devastated look on his face. And that could have been a way to articulate a book about insecurities. So those are the things you do. And then once you have that concept, you just, if you don't know how to do it yourself, or you can't just use a picture to put on there that already is in existence, you can just hire, again, a book cover designer, and they're also on Upwork or Fiverr. I mean, obviously, we work with a wonderful book cover designer. Sometimes you have to intervene with the design of the book when it's not like up to par, but you never want to just make it one thing without going over it and looking at it 2 days later and say, I could tweak something there. Yeah. So that's the way you would do that with the book cover. And then, like anything with the back cover, that's going to be like not much different. You'll just, put like a picture of yourself, like an author, author of the book, put a little bit of blurb about you, or you can just put like a little summary about what the book is. And we did all three of those. And those are things that if you don't have the ability to do that, just know that there's plenty of people, including us here at Dirty Truth Publishing, who can help with that, but like Fiverr, Upwork, and of course us. So reach out to us, dy@deanteyoung.com. What will be your next question?
The next one was, I had trouble, like, I didn't have enough words, and I didn't know how many pages I needed.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big question, is how many pages do I need? Because I didn't want this story to be strung out into this long 500-page book,
Right.
but I also wanted what I wanted to say in there.
That's such a great question, because so many of us wonder, how long does a book supposed to be? How long should a book be? And the simple question is, a book needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell the story that it's trying to tell. But I know that sounds like a generic non-answer, but the reality is it's the truth. But I personally find that books that are at about 100 pages, it's like the perfect fit. And if you can't find enough words to put in there are ways to do things where it's not just filler. You can put relevant things in there. Like, for example, I know when you were doing your book, there was a poem that you liked.
Yeah.
And it was relevant to the situation. So now, a lot of times,
And
those
pictures.
things, yeah,
was another thing.
yeah, those,
actually.
yep, exactly. Those things are trademarked. And also, to your point, on that page that you were showing, there was a whole page with a quote on it.
Yes.
Now, of course, you don't want to just put the book and have filler in it, but those things are still relevant to the thing. And also, it's all about the designing. Like, if you have a nice formatter like we do, it kind of takes it to a whole different level, because they can do things. Sometimes just having a quote on a full page and that's it. Sometimes that's a style thing, and it's not like it's wasting space. But you can definitely do that. Put quotes on there. You can put, like, one thing that I've done with my books is I will put articles. Like, I will republish articles that I wrote online. I will copy and paste those and put that on pages in the book that's relevant to the topic. So, like, if I wrote an article about low self-esteem, that's something that I will put like an article section, and it would be things in there. And then also resources. You can also, if it's a book that has anything to do with something where an expert could be involved, you can ask an expert with something. Like, let's say that you knew like someone that kind of counsels parents at hospitals about how to cope with issues with their newborn child. Let's say you ask them in your moment of devastation, or even years later, hey, can we have like a little short conversation, 15, 20 minutes, and then can I record it and then kind of put that in there and make that be, here's advice from the expert about how to handle this. So that's a great way to do it, because that also gives the book more value too. And it can be it can be as an addendum to the book. It can be part of the prologue. It can be just a chapter, say, like, hear from the experts, and that can be a chapter. And those things work effectively too. So those are the types of things you can do. Like you said, pictures. You can do quotes on one page. Now with the poems, I know sometimes they're copywritten, and sometimes you can't really do things with that. But you can also write your own poem, and it's not like it's hard to do, because, and it doesn't even have to rhyme. It can also be like, here are thoughts from a journal that I was keeping at the time. Like, let's say you kept a journal at the time. You can say, these are my journal notes from when this happened. All that stuff will be helpful.
So another question that was, how long is it going to take for everything, to get everything completed and done?
That's a great question too, because so for me, going back to my situation, my first book, I say I wrote it in 11 days. And from the time that I first started with the outline to the time that it was available for sale on Amazon, it was a total of 19 days. So the process worked like this. I started with what do I think people need to know about managing your insecurities? And so I just thought about that. I thought about things that, if I was talking to someone and they had a book like, this is a book I want to read. So about it, how to feel good about yourself. I wish I could do that at the time. What other people that talk about you, what they might be going through. And so you can look at them and say, hey, you're no better than me, so why should I feel insecure? So I just kind of made a list, like brainstorming. I call it a brain dump. You can get just a notes app. You can just scribble stuff on a piece of paper or whatever and just write all this stuff down. And you can do that in a matter of an hour, or you can make it as long as it takes. So that's what I did. I wrote down all these random ideas about insecurities. And once I did that, then I just started thinking, okay, this will go with this will go with that. Now I have a table of contents. So I try to get to a table of contents, not necessarily an outline, which is almost the same thing, but not quite. So once I have that, in sections, I'm like, okay, let me do a part 1, a part 2, a part 3 in the book, or it can just be 12 chapters. So it's almost like 12 blog posts or 12 articles about these things that so I said, this is about self-doubt. This is about insecurities. This is about how to deal with people thinking you're this or that. What is good about you? Think about what's good about you. And then I had one where it was like, act more like a baby or something, because babies, they don't have any insecurity problems because they just walk into a room naked and cry in a room in a church and not even care. And we don't care until we get to a certain point. So you start with that, with the outline, after brainstorming and brain dumping all over the paper. And then once you get this stuff like put together, then you just start writing from your heart what you think people should know based on what you've learned, what you've grown into. Like in your situation, you were just writing your story. So in that way, you do all that. And so that's what I did. And then once I was just writing, and it was like over the course of a few days, I would set a goal for myself, write 4,000 words. I tell you what, it's a lot easier to speak 4,000 words. And then I knew that I can write 4,000 words in a matter of like 2 hours if I really was committed, and more like 3 hours. And I would just set that up. But I was determined because I was like writing furiously, like, and then this happened. And then another great thing, always tell stories. Here, never forget this. Never tell a story without making a point, and never make a point without telling a story.
Right.
And so that's what you always want to do. So I did all that stuff. And then at the same time, I had contacted a person that was a book cover designer, who I got that information from the person that I hired as a coach. And then she gave me a great deal. And I said, make me a book. This is the title. This is the subtitle. And then she just put something together. I said, oh, I like it. She gave me 5 different variations of the cover. And then I was proofreading it myself, but you can get somebody else to do that. And then I had a person to edit it. And in the course of me still writing the book, I had these people working on the book cover and all that. So this is the kind of thing, because the book was only 105 pages, it didn't take that long for them to edit it. And so once I got the outline done and all that stuff, and doing all this stuff at the same time, you can really batch this stuff. You can do this stuff like in 6-hour chunks, 4-hour chunks, or however long. And then once I had it completely finished and looked over it, then I just uploaded it to Amazon after they did all the stuff that they did. And Amazon KDP is the easiest thing in the world to do all the formatting for you, as far as getting it online and then printing it. And so once it's on Amazon KDP, it's like, okay, now they're doing the fulfillment, they're doing the shipping, and it's up there. Of course, you have to know your keywords and stuff like that, but you can do this kind of stuff while you're doing the simplest thing. I would be on my phone typing ideas as far as, okay, how do I describe this book? And then I would just type it out like that. So that's really the process. And it might sound like a lot, but now, if I was doing this now, I would use AI as an assistant, not to write the book, because that's a disaster. But I would use AI as an assistant, and it would help me. It would kind of be like a co-founder, a digital co-founder, and say, listen, this is what you're going to do. And I would create a very detailed prompt. So that's what you have the advantage of now in 2025, is you can create a detailed prompt. Or if you need us to do it, we can do it too. Very detailed. So where it gets you to a nice starting point. And then you have to, it'll get you 80% there, but the final 20% is where you make it your own. And it's not just like a robotic book that looks like everybody else's. You got to put your personality into it, and then your actual information from the stories that you lived through. So if that makes sense. I know that's a lot, but it's actually not as much as you think.
So how long would it take from beginning to end?
From beginning to end, like I said, it really just depends on your level of commitment per day. But I can just say it can take 3 days, or it can take a year. Yeah. But you can make it take less time by just streamlining everything the way that I'm talking about. Just get right to the outline. Don't think it's this long, lengthy thing. And then, like I said, speaking the book is going to make it take a lot less time. I honestly believe that anybody, if they really commit to it, I would just say this: if you commit to this for 2 hours per day for 10 days, you can get the book completely and totally done. And as far as the getting it published and things like that, you can do that just online with the click of a couple of buttons.
Yeah.
10 days with 2 hour commitment.
So my other question is, how much money am I going to make?
People love to know that. How much? Look, this is what I would say. When it comes to money, if that's your mission for it, then that's a good mission. So what you really should do is you should have a money plan even before you start. And what I would suggest when it comes to money, I tell you this: you can make $0 or you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. But I will tell you that the best way to make money from that is to not making money from the sales of your book, but making money from the fact that you have a book because of the opportunities that come from it. So the easiest way to really do it is to offer a service. That's the easiest way to make money from a book, is to offer a service, whether it's I'll be a speaker on this topic because I wrote this book about this topic, and people will hire you. I got paid $250 just to speak for 15 minutes at a church, all because of my book. That's
what I was going to ask you. Like the speaking engagements, did you make quite a bit of money from that? Or?
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy because just the fact of having a book and then making sure that I publicized it by putting it on social media and showing pictures of other people with the book. And then just me trying to go from one thing to another to just talk about book projects and about my book. People are like, oh, you got a book? Oh, well, they would start asking and things. But if I was doing it now, I would just be very practical and I would be very intentional about, I'm going to go to this many places and I'm going to ask, hey, bring me on as a guest speaker. Personally, I've made over 6 figures just from book things alone. And that doesn't even count the relationships that have come our way and things of that nature. I know you went a different path. You wasn't really trying to do all that stuff, but the good thing about it is that this book came out last year, but even in 10 years, it'll still be a new book to most people.
Yeah, and I agree. And with me, I chose not to, go to speaking engagements, and there may be a time when it comes when I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
I just, it was like, it was hard to get that story out. And so going and speaking it over and over again, it was like, I'm just not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So there may come a time when I'm ready for that. And I'm sure that, there's plenty of places because, it can go into the church. It can go, because in my story, I speak on God, and so it can really go in a lot of places and stuff. So it's just me not being ready yet, but I think that if people get out there and really, try, they would get it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, because here's the other thing, believe it or not, you're going to laugh at this, but you could be a book coach right now. Yeah. You could be a book coach and you don't know anything as far as you're concerned, but as far as the reality is concerned, you know a lot. Because, I mean, think about it. I was a person that had a coach tell me stuff and I didn't know any of that. And then I became a book coach and I made money in 10 different ways from books.
Yeah.
10 different ways. The least of what I did was book sales. And
that's another question I have for you. So is book coaching or ghostwriting?
Oh, ghostwriting every day of the week. Ghostwriting, top to bottom, up and down. It doesn't even have to be a ghostwritten book, but ghostwriting, you can make so much money from it. But it's also rewarding because you get a chance to meet interesting people and kind of learn. It's almost like learning for free, actually getting paid to learn. Because
but going down the path of somebody wanting their book, would you suggest coaching or ghostwriting?
You mean for a person?
Yeah, if I came to you and I said, what's my choice on this? What's the best choice for me on my book? Is it to get coaching from you or is it to get ghostwriting?
If you want book coaching would be, if you mean coaching you to write a book, it would probably be it would be better for you if you don't have money like that, because ghostwriting is more for people that have more money than time. And then book coaching, I would say, is for people that have more, time than money, because it's
See,
cheaper.
I like the book coaching from you.
Yeah.
Would it have been easier for me to be like, here, I wrote this all down and push it to you and let you do, or you interview me, and been the ghostwriter? It would have been easier, but I felt like I liked getting the coaching.
Yeah.
I liked you telling me this isn't right, or you need to do this differently, or you need to do that. Like, I had a big issue with the cover. That was something that I just thought you could put anything on there.
Yeah.
And so I like the coaching.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I didn't charge her for the coaching, and the coaching.
He did.
Yeah. Book coaching. Book coaching is actually really about the book. It's not even really about the cover. But I pretty much, I actually have an all-in-one package. An all-in-one package, and that's going to include all the other stuff. Ghostwriting, my fees are, depending on a book, typically would be about anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000, and that's actually on the low end, and that really doesn't even include the cover design or anything like that. But as far as book coaching, what I was charging as a book coach was $250 for one session, $500 for 3 sessions, and $750 for 5 sessions. Now those numbers would be different now, but that's really a steal, because here's the thing: ask yourself this: would I give somebody a $10 bill in exchange for a $100 bill? Everybody would. So that's kind of the way to think of it, because you can make, if you do everything that I say, you can make a lot more money than whatever you pay me as a coach.
Exactly.
If you pay me $1,000, if I told you that if you do everything I say with this, you can make at least $20,000-$30,000, you just got to pay me $1,000. I think you'll find a way to do that. But you, as long as you are committed to doing it, because I've been in this situation. I've invested thousands into my own personal coaching. That's why, my own personal development, because it's so important to invest in yourself, and we all need that in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I was a hard-headed client. I gave you a hard time because I wanted things my way. You suggested other things, like we were talking about the book cover, and it was like, no, this is what I want. You made it work, and I appreciate that.
The whole thing about monetization, making money from this, I'm just going to read off a list of the different ways that, and this is not to impress you, this is to impress upon you, those out there, our viewers, to impress upon you that you can do everything and more. Like I said, if I had this to do over again, there's a whole lot of things that will be different, but I'd probably just do it the same way, because that's how I learned all the lessons. Okay, so the way that I monetized one book that led into all these other books is, these are the ways I did it: through book royalties, audio book royalties, book sales, event ticket sales, merchandise such as t-shirts, hats, speaking like we talked about, ghostwriting, very lucrative, courses, online courses. Nowadays they have a thing called challenges, which I'll be doing challenges. It's a great way to get people into your ecosystem. I'm going to be doing my first challenge very, very soon, and also to make cash pretty quickly. Like I said, book coaching and as an editor. So these are things that, you guys can do. Any one of you can do. You can still do it. And it's a whole lot of fun, because you're in the driver's seat. It's an entrepreneurial thing about your story, your expertise, whatever it happens to be. And so I want to just kind of make it clear that writing a book, and then the opportunities that came from it, like I said, being on television, meeting great people, great friends. Being on television is not just, oh, you're on TV. It's about the connectedness. There was actually, remember the one woman that saw me on TV talking about my book, and then she contacted me on social media and ended up becoming a friend of ours for a while, and was even connecting us to other people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that happened a lot because even like the book signings you went to and had yourself, you brought in a lot of people, and people just like cling to you, and they wanted to know, okay, how can I write my book? Even you being just on social media, you engaged in Miss Pointer's.
Yvonne Pointer's.
Yvonne Pointer's Hope Haven that she has every night. It's a live event, and just you participating in that and speaking, and you wasn't doing it as to even meet anybody. You just went on there because the support and to say hi to Mrs. Pointer, and you ended up meeting people.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I actually got a ghostwriting client going on the Hope Haven, and it's really great because we don't need to have like big agents and managers to get us gigs and things like that. There's a way to do this in this world that we live in. We can do all of this stuff ourselves, and it's a whole lot of fun too, because even if you don't like speaking, you have to at least like helping people. And if you like helping people, then don't think of it as speaking. Think of it as just sharing your story, as helping you and as helping them, no matter what.
I think that was the big thing with me, is I thought that you had to have like this big company take your book and and all these different things. So definitely I would have hired and paid you as a book coach.
Yeah.
Because I trust you, and I feel like seeing what you've done with your stuff and your books and everything that you've accomplished and everything, I would have definitely, as an outsider, hired you as a book coach.
Well, that really means.
I mean, I hired you. I just didn't pay you cash.
I don't know. That's crazy, man. Those, man. Yeah.
I mean, that's the perks of being married. You don't have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. There is afterpay and don't have to pay.
Right.
but yeah. So you make some great points. I love the fact that you said that, because it just brings up. I went to a lot of different book fairs. I remember I went to something called Author Alley, and Author Alley created opportunities for me in relationships that ended up manifesting into something after that. And then I went to something called Glossy, which is the Great Lakes African American Writers Conference. I went there a couple of times. There was one time I went where I was a vendor, and it was all because I had showed up at Author Alley, and the person that put it together, Dr. Leah Lewis, she's an esteemed person in the space, the writing space here in Cleveland, and she was able to get me as a last minute addition to be one of the vendors, and I was there for about 3 hours less than the event took place, and I made $300 in sales just with my books. And I'm always the one that has several books. Everyone else usually has one or two books, and I say that because, not to say, oh, look at me, I'm better. It's not about that. It's about the fact that when I started, I had no mindset of I got to make money from this book, and I think that helped me in that situation, because I didn't have a marketing plan. Even though the course that I took to learn how to do it and the coaching I got, it had all these marketing plans on how to do this and that. I just wrote one book, one woman. We love it. Our friend Amber, she's a great friend, a great supporter now.
Yes.
One woman named Amber, she contacted me a month after my book came out, and she was just like, I feel like you wrote this book for me. This was amazing. Oh my God. My husband brought this home to me, and he showed me this, and I feel like you were speaking just to me. And that brought me literally to tears. April 28th, 2021. And she is such a dear friend. Now she gets everything for free from us. She is so loyal, so committed, so dedicated. Doesn't ask for anything. She's beyond belief. And because of that, all you need is one person. And if that's the only person that ever read a book from me and got something from it, anything else I did and had zero sales, it was worth it, because she sees herself differently now. Now, she's not perfect. None of us are. It's never about trying to get to perfection. It's about how to get, just a little bit better. And so from there, doing that and then growing and getting into these other situations, it just kept putting me around people and being able to share my message. Every one of you can do the exact same thing.
And I think that's the moral of the story, is you got Two normal people. I mean, at least you like reading and writing. I didn't. And we wrote books.
Yeah.
And was successful with the things that we've done.
Yeah.
The books, you know. You, of course, more successful, but you put your heart and soul into it. And I think that's another thing with your coaching is you put your heart and soul into it. Even if it has nothing to do with you. If you're coaching somebody, I've heard you come home and talking to that person and how you want to help them get even further, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is the big difference between having somebody to help you and guide you through it than somebody that just says, write your book and we'll tell you if we're going to publish it. It's like you actually get out there and help it. So.
Yeah, it's great because not only you're helping people write a book, but also share their story and expand their horizons. And this has come with so many things. I remember they hired me to speak to these children. It was I think it was called the Fatherhood Initiative. It was some kind of program and it was like kids that were between the ages of the 4th grade age and 10th grade. So they were elementary school up to high school, and I was speaking there at the main library in Cleveland, and just for an hour and 15 minutes, they paid me over $400 just for that. And the thing is, I bring up money just because I know a lot of people care about that. This is not about the money, but it's about the fact that they give you money because they know that skill is valuable. They know that your time is valuable. They know that your expertise is valuable. And they figure that I'm at a place where I can be resonant with these young people. Now, some people, some of these kids, they were just turning a deaf ear. But then there was a few kids who talked to me privately that were younger, like 10, 11 years old. And they were telling me things about like how they have to live with their dad and they wish they could see their mom or the other way around. And I remember I went to to an actual high school to be a speaker, and I ended up being a vendor. And these kids were telling me about how their parents neglect them and how they wish that they could speak to their parents the way they speak to me. And this is stuff that I even have on video. And it's important to document these moments. All of this stuff came as a result of writing one book that led to another one and another one and another one. And we all have that impact in some way with people. And that's rewarding.
And that's a big thing. Like I said, it's just like going to a restaurant. You know, if you go in there and you just get, okay, I'm only here to do this, this, and this, and then you can leave, as opposed to somebody who welcomes you as soon as you walk in the door, somebody who, you know, is catering to you no matter what.
Yeah. You
know, you're going to want that person more, you know, and I'm not just saying that because you're my husband. I said that long before that you put your heart and soul into it and you take it to another level. It's like, I care about your book. I care about, you know, whereas most people are just going to be like, okay, it's another book, you know, and I just feel that you do.
Yeah. I'm so grateful. So grateful to hear you say that, just because you do want to serve with intention, and that is with intention. But, you know, we must say that it's also a blessing to be able to do something that's rewarding for both parties or for all parties involved. And people that I've coached and ghost written for, they are all extremely happy. Their lives have gotten even better. They've gotten opportunities for themselves. We've gotten wonderful relationships from the ghostwriting opportunities, and even other opportunities. There's been people on the show that's been people that I met as authors. Like, for example, Zach, the cerebral palsy vigilante. Yeah, he's an awesome friend, and he's an author. And
love
I'm
Zach.
so inspired by him. So inspired by just his spirit. And of course, the great Wayne Dawson. He was my first ghostwriting project. People ask me, "Hey, how do you get into ghostwriting?" I say, just ask. You know, just ask. And the best way to make a lot of money as a ghostwriter is to start with free work. Trust and believe that you're talking to somebody who can tell you top to bottom. That's the best way to start. So, but without that, you know, with that being said, let's talk about how it's rewarded us. We've gone on these wonderful trips and vacations, and every trip and vacation that we've gone on, which at this point, since 2023 to now, not even a full 2 years because it started in late July. So actually by the end of this month, it will be 2 years, but we have gone on 7 different trips or vacations. Let's see, the vacations, I think, has been 4 of those, and then the other 3 were trips. But it's been so fulfilling, so rewarding, and it's all made possible by having the book and all the things that's come from the book financially. Even where we live at and the car that we drive had some parts played from books, from book sales, whatever, coaching programs, ghostwriting, whatever. And I want you to kind of talk a little bit about the great fun that we've had. We're just getting started. As a matter of fact, we ain't even started yet. We still laying on the pillow. Okay, so I want you to just talk a little bit about that, because you can attest to the rewards in that way.
And very exciting, and it feels good to go out there and not have to. Of course, we're not going out there like, oh, we're just throwing money in the air, but it feels good to go out there and actually enjoy yourself. If you see something you want to do it. If you see something you want to buy it. I can't say enough about the vacations. I mean, it's thrilling. And then you get more stories while you're out there. You talk to more people when you're on vacation. You're talking to other people and getting their insights into it and sharing your story. And, it's a networking thing, while you're having a vacation. So it's not even like you're, this is a job, because it's not. You're out there having fun, and you're talking about things, and your book comes up, their book comes up, or their whatever's going on, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and just so you know, even with the things that's been accomplished, there is still a lot of meat on the bone. Meaning, there's a whole lot more that we can chew on. And we just haven't even done that in terms of opportunities. And I always say, again, I don't say this to impress you. I say it to impress upon you that you can do the exact same thing and even go further. You actually have the advantage, because I didn't have a me like to have to do it this particular way. I had, my coach, who I love. She's amazing. Every coach that I have and the ones I have now, I love them. But here's the thing. Their coaching created a coach. I'm a coach, a ghostwriter, and all these different things. I'm trying to do the same thing. And
you're still being coached, Yeah. A lot of people think that, you get this coaching done and then, but I feel that the coaching thing is like your thing. I just do, I know writing books are your thing, but I just feel like coaching is your thing. You know how to talk to people. You have patience. He had patience with me. Nobody would have ever had the patience. And I was ruthless when I was writing this book. I was the 2-year-old stomping my feet, and I want it this way and that way. And, you put it blunt, but you was also very, understanding. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, I can't thank you, but I tell you, the thing is that it does become some knockdown, drag out, fights, but that just means that you're working on something meaningful, because if it's not meaningful, nobody's going to even, there's no hostilities that'll come into play, but the stakes are high, and I want you guys to internalize that. I want you to internalize the fact that your story matters, no matter what you think it is, no matter if you think it doesn't or does, it absolutely does.
And get out there and do it, because it 3 days for me.
Yeah.
And what was it? 11 days for you.
Yeah.
You get out there and do it. Don't be the person sitting on the couch saying, "Oh, I can't write. Neither could I."
Yeah. And that's why we're going to have a challenge. I'm definitely going to have a challenge, and I'm going to announce some, who wants to be a part of this challenge to go through, I don't know if should I do 3 days or 5 days?
I would do 5.
5?
It's hard to,
You think people would show up on Zoom for 5 days in a row? I mean, they could. I mean, it doesn't matter, even if it's one person.
Maybe start with 3 and then do a 5.
Okay.
Do a 3, and then if people, that's one of those things where you got to do it for 3 days and get input and, what people thought about it, and ask them, hey, do you want 5 days?
Yeah.
You might find a whole bunch of people. It's like, hey, this was fun. I enjoyed it. Let me do 5.
Yeah. And I think that that's such a great idea.
Because I'll tell you, at first, I didn't enjoy writing the book. I
Right.
didn't at first. I did at the end.
And the good thing is that even though this was not even a full year ago when she did this book, the reality is that now the way that I would that I would have her do this now would be completely different. Well, first of all, she took the initiative to write it. She told me one day, she said, "Yeah, I'm just going to write a book." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cute. That's cute," And then next thing I know, I go into. She says, "Yeah, so I'm almost finished with my book," and this was like the next day, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she shows me on the computer because she asked. She said, "Can I use the computer?" I said, "You can use anything you want." I go and look, and I see that she had Google Docs open, and I was looking at it, and I was like shocked. I was like completely and totally shocked, and that just made me say, "Yeah, man, I'm going to commit to helping her because if she's taking the initiative, that's all I need to see." And this is from a person again who doesn't like to write books, who doesn't care about that, has no interest in it. And I've been credited as the influence. Everything is, to God be the glory is what it really is. I can't take credit for it because whatever is good about me, it came from the Lord, to be honest with you. So I'm really grateful that you did that because to me, you helped to validate my service offerings. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't do good for me. I was able to help other people. That's not me.
And like I said, I'm not saying that just because you're my husband or, even if you was my friend. I honestly, I've sit and watched you with other people. I've listened to phone calls, Zoom meetings. I've been there with you to go through it. And you have a patience that goes above and beyond with people. At times I was sitting there like, I would have just said, this is it. I'm done, But, and especially with me, like I said, I was the stubborn one. I think I was probably your worst one, and I didn't even pay.
Oh man, that's how like when you get a drunk uncle that come to the cookout and he'd be like, "Yeah, man, y'all got some rib tips, man. I need 3 plates when I leave." And everybody else, they're tipping, and he just come there just freeload. That's what you sound like. You said, "Yeah, I was the worst one and I ain't even pay." You sound like that.
I mean, it was the freeloader, and honestly, when I tell you, I was the worst. I'm being honest, aware that I was the worst person ever.
And I wouldn't say that.
I would, yeah. I mean, just be honest about it.
No, listen, maybe my love is clouding my judgment.
It has to be. Because when I look back at it, I'm like, I would have literally threw the computer at me. I would have hung up the phone on me. I mean, and especially when it came time to, like I said, sticking to what I wanted and, not listening to the professionals, tell me what was best. And, I was just hellbound and determined. This is how it's going to be. I don't care how it looks. I don't care. This is what I want. And, I did listen to you a little bit.
Wow.
And that was only because I trusted that you were, but yeah.
Well,
a great coach.
Again, that means so much. I really just want people to share their story. That's the whole point of the dirty truth, because the dirty truth, again, your hardships, your setbacks, all these things, it creates connection, and it also makes people feel they can relate to you. Because when people feel like they can relate to you, it makes all the difference in the world. That's why you should share the dirtier parts of your life. And when I say dirty, I don't mean dirty. I mean things that are inconvenient or you might be embarrassed to talk about, because that will get you further than trying to look perfect. And this is not even coming from me. This is coming from a friend of mine who actually he was a trainer. He was a trainer for me when I made my first book, and I asked him, "What do you think of it?" Because I gave it to him to read. He says, "You really made yourself vulnerable in this book, even to the point where you probably embarrassed yourself." He said, "I trust you more because when most people write books, they try to make themselves look perfect. You made yourself look pretty wide open with things that were embarrassing." And when he said that, I knew I was never going to forget that, because it's important to me that people take what I'm saying as being authentic. And the best way to be authentic is to say things about mistakes you made or times you felt embarrassed or ashamed or messed up, screwed up. And that's why you should share your dirty truth as your story, which is your number one asset. And the book is the vehicle that carries that asset. So do it. And I'm here to help. We both are here to help. Any closing words?
Yeah, I can help a little bit. I might not be able to edit or, you don't want me doing the proofreading, but I'll guide you through.
Trust me, she's helped a lot more than you realize. I
have made some nice book covers or suggestions on the book covers, but yeah, I would always help out. I'll always, be the one telling you, talking them down off the ledge. It's not that difficult. I'm being silly, but it really isn't. When I tell you, you made the process easy, very easy, because I'm very impatient. And you
awesome.
Made it easy. So.
And you see this right here?
Ask me how I can tell your story.
Just do it. dy@deanteyoung.com. Look out for that challenge.